Hello, everybody, and welcome to another wonderful day at Live at the Waterhole. My name is Taylor McCurdy, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you. Now, right off the bat, I'm just going to double check that any of you can hear anything. At the moment, it is very quiet, and all I can hear are the birds outside my room. And I know that that's not normally the case. So I just want to very quickly get that sorted. There we go. Now we have some sound. Wonderful, wonderful. If this is your first time watching, welcome. It's great to have you all on board wherever you may be watching or however you might be watching. If you'd like to ask us questions, of course, for the first hour and a half, you're welcome to use YouTube and comment on the chat stream, or you can even head over to the WildEarth website and find the question tab and use that to ask questions. Because as I say, every single time I host this show, I don't like talking to myself. So feel free to ask me anything you've ever wanted to ask a naturalist before. But we're at Okukuyo, which is a waterhole in Etosha National Park in Namibia. And we've got a couple of the regulars here. We've got springbuck, and then in and amongst the springbuck, you can see a bird with a very long neck and long legs. That is a black-headed heron. And no, that was not a bird call, that hachu. That was a sneeze from a human. uh, this waterhole is watched by many people. There's a lodge situated right here, and some lucky people are afforded the opportunity to sit and watch this wildlife in real life. But this is as good as it gets if you're stuck in another country or if you're feeling a bit sad at work. This is live and it is happening right now. So it's great that we have the cameras and we're able to watch wildlife all over the world. So this heron is one of my favorite species. We do see quite a few different ones, but at this waterhole, this is the most common one. It's much more different than the grey heron, which is a species of heron that's actually widely distributed, not just in South Africa, but in other parts of the world too. But this individual is smaller in size. You can see why they call it a black-headed heron, of course, with that dark coloration. And this species has a variety of hunting techniques. So right now, it's just standing on a rock, right? It's looking about, hoping to catch some fish or frogs or anything that might be in here, little insects, that type of thing. But it needs to wait until there is some movement close by. And it's really the patience game for a lot of these, or actually, no, for anything that hunts, right? You've got to plan your attack wisely. There's a lot of skill involved, but also being in the right place at the right time. A bit of luck would assist any animals that hunt. Let's see if we're going to be fortunate enough to see this bird catch a fish or something. With my favorite, observing the birds and their interesting behaviors. Lane 21, thank you for being the first one to ask me a question today. You said, do storks and herons travel great distances between water sources, or do they generally stick to the same area? So it just really depends on what water sources are available. I'll give you an example. Those are pied crows making that sound, in case you were wondering. I've spent quite a bit of time up in Makuleki, that is in South Africa, north of Pafuri, which is an area is in the Kruger National Park. Makuleki is basically a private concession, so it's not open to the public. But it's a beautiful area, and it's known for its wetland system. So During the rainy season, there's huge pans that fill up, and the life that it brings is amazing, particularly of the bird kind. And when there is water available, there are egrets and herons and pelicans at different times of the year, but in masses. And when there's no water, they have to go somewhere else. And some of these birds, as you said, they could travel a big distance away. However, what they might do if they are trying to get to a specific point, they might stop over at a smaller water hole just to refuel or to even have a break. So it also depends on how much pressure is at that particular place. For example, we don't see that many bird species around the water's edge here at Okokuyo, a couple of blacks and the blackwings, Egyptian geese, the odd little grebe, and of course the pied crows, as you heard. There's a bunch of other birds. But in terms of those that are fishing and in the water, the heron has got virtually no competition. And you can see the bird is completely unfazed by the springbuck. Oh, there's even a little dove that's just landed. Although the heron will keep a close eye if it feels uncomfortable. Not that the springbuck are going to want to eat this bird, but it might just feel a bit like pressure that they're getting it too close, and then it will fly away and move to a different point. In Etosha, there's not that many water holes. They're few and far between, and in fact, most of them are seasonal pans. This one, though, has water pumped into it regularly, and it's also topped up with rain, of course. So you might find that there are birds that are resident to this area. We quite often see a black-tailed lapwing. There's a Corey bustard that we see too. There's one or two little grebes that swim about. They're definitely residents here. Uh, but if there is a lot of pressure and there's not much water around, then we'll start to see more birds gathering in this particular area. Oh, Python, you said good morning. You've got your coffee and your chocolate biscuit ready. Oh, you share the chocolate biscuits. Now I'm starting to feel a little bit snackish, and I've only got water next to me, which doesn't sound as appetizing as a cup of hot coffee. I wouldn't mind a little hot chocolate treat. Then I suppose I get the best of both worlds. I get a hot drink, and I get my sweet chocolate. But that would require me walking into the kitchen, which is not just a stone throw away like it is when I work from home. Then I can very quickly just pop the kettle on, and wait for it to finish boiling, and then add the water and go back to sit down again. And it takes, not a very long time. However, it would take me a fair amount of time to get all the way up to the kitchen, and I wouldn't be able to run back because otherwise I'd just spill the coffee or hot chocolate everywhere. Not that any of these animals are interested in eating or drinking any of those things. They would have most likely never tasted that, so they don't know what they're missing out on. Heron, are you wading through the water? Are you going to head to another rock? Or are you going to actually go out and actively hunt? No, looking for another perch. So the birds will move around every now and then, it's, I suppose, like fishermen, right? They all start in one area, and if they're not getting any bites or seeing any activity from the fish, then they'll eventually move on and try and find another spot. So the birds will do just that. If they don't see any reflections from the fish in the water, whether it's African lungfish or a type of barbel species, catfish, something along those lines, I'm not entirely sure. Right, but we're going to just take a moment now to head on over and see what the weather is looking like. see, sometimes the camera just does this thing where it does what it wants. It can be quite sensitive or it can be quite slow. There's no real happy medium. But weather's looking good. It's starting to clear up now in the parts of Mpumalanga and Limpopo. These are provinces, or if you will, states in South Africa, as we've had quite a couple of gloomy, doomy days, but we needed the rain. And Okukuya is looking just as vibrant and beautiful as ever. Or maybe vibrant is probably not the correct word to use, but not vibrant in terms of greenery and plants. It's just this typical scene with the reflection of the sky and the water, and then of course it looks like somebody's turned the saturation up on this view with the soil, of course, complementing the hues of blue. Natasha Smith, you say good morning. You're watching from a cold and grey Wales, and it's wonderful to watch and listen to me spreading my joy and knowledge. Well, thank you very much. That's so kind of you, Natasha. I try my best. I do heavily rely on the wildlife doing all sorts of strange, wonderful things. And if you know me, I'm not particularly bloodthirsty, so I don't always go in search of the gory things. But when you do what I do, you have to expect the unexpected. But I love to focus on the smaller, intricate interactions within an ecosystem, the ones that no one ever thinks about or are often forgotten. But with the Waterhole show, we're a little bit limited with that, but we've had some great sightings over the past couple of months. And yesterday, if you watched the Waterhole show, I had such a chuckle. We had something that I've never seen before. It was two elephant bulls that had come down to have a drink here at Okukuyo, and they were standing just on the right-hand side and drinking nicely. And there was a family of Egyptian geese with a gosling, but they've got quite big now. And everyone decided, well, we want to go for a swim, but we'd like to also be in the shade. And the elephants were shading a section of water underneath their bellies and off to the side. So guess what the Egyptian geese did? They went and spent a couple of minutes underneath the belly of an elephant, which I thought was hysterical. And they didn't really react so much. Only when the geese moved around and approached from the front did one of the elephants actually flick its trunk out at them to say, "Hey, actually, you're in my space. Go somewhere else."
Whether you're a retiree, a recent graduate, or a professional seeking a change, the 55-day eco-training program is for you. With the coaching of experienced training guides, you'll embark on an unforgettable adventure that will give you a deep understanding of wildlife, conservation, and African cultures. If you sign up locally or internationally using this promo code, you'll receive 2,000 Rand off.
Ah, there we go. And now we have one of the most spectacular animals in Namibia. This is a oryx or a gemsbok. And that little bird just in front of it that ducked underneath the water, that's the grebe that I was telling you about. So these animals have been made famous, and some of you will probably, well, you'll know what I'm talking about. Those stunning photos of the red sand dunes, or not necessarily red sand dunes, a bit of a disagreement there between those two. With them the Gemsbok will be walking on top of the sand dunes, and then sometimes if it's an aerial photo, you get the animals walking in a long line, and then their shadows casted just next to them, and it's quite spectacular. If you don't know what I'm talking about, highly recommend going to Google it. You can also hear the European bee eaters chatting away. Lucy, you've asked if there are any baboons in Okukuyo. Yes, there are. There is a species of baboon that is called the Chakma baboon. It's the same species we get in South Africa. I haven't seen any roaming around. However, it's hard to believe that they wouldn't be frequenting this area. I think it's just a matter of time before we catch them drinking from this waterhole because of the size of the lodge just behind the camera. And we know what baboons like to do. They love to raid camps if they have learned this behavior. If not, then they'll probably keep away. Now, for those of you that are new, and because it's a Sunday or it's Saturday evening for some of you, but for the most part of the world, it should be Sunday, we've got a bunch of new people watching. So it's great to have you on board. And you're probably thinking, hey, this is a safari location, it's in Africa. Why are the animals going all the way into the water? So there's no crocodiles here. I have discussed it quite a bit, but it's always nice to just touch on it. Oh, Picasso. Now, this is something a bit nothing to do with what we're looking at, but Picasso has asked a question. Have I ever heard a woodland kingfisher sing with a different accent? Now, I know that sounds crazy because maybe you're thinking birds don't have accents. What nonsense are you talking? But they do. It's really funny. So, depending on the region that you're in, each bird is going to sing or vocalize slightly differently. So Picasso, I can't say that I have, but remember, I'm only hearing, for the most part, woodland kingfishers consistently in the summer months here in the Sabi Sand Game Reserve or in Limpopo or the Mpumalanga provinces. And to me, they all kind of sound the same. But an example that I talk about this one often because it's honestly, it's the only example that I can really think of, or one where it's noticeable, is with a bird called a black-backed puffback, and also quite widespread throughout the country. But in the southeast coast and the Eastern Cape province of South Africa, the black-backed puffbacks don't do the typical call that we hear up here, but instead they just go like this sort of very fast, high pitched vocalization. And I was caught off guard when I came up here. One of the, not the tests, but obviously when you do interviews, a lot of the time, I don't think it happens very much anymore. You'd have to do an interview drive. And somebody said to me, "What bird is that calling?" And I honestly had no idea. And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And they kind of looked at me as if to say, "How do you not know that bird? It's quite a common one." And when they said it was a black-backed puffback, that was my first moment of realization. And I put two and two together. I'd heard people talking about birds having different accents, and and I was like, "Oh, this makes so much sense." And I explained the entire situation. And even when the black-backed puffbacks are doing that same call, that quick vocalization, up here in Mpumalanga and Limpopo, it still sounds slightly different than what it sounds like in the Eastern Cape. There's one lonely kudu all by itself. If you do hear the odd clap, it's me, because there are two of these little black flies. I think they're actually called black flies, but they bite and they are so unpleasant. So I'm trying to swat them off me so that they don't bite through my clothes. Mm. Hi, Justin. So Justin Wright is one of the viewers that we have regularly. So is Picasso. So it's great to, of course, have you almost every single day. Thank you so much for supporting Wild Earth. You've asked how I am today. Firstly, I am great. Thank you for asking. I'm good. Had a nice drive on the sunrise safari, so hoping that it will continue into the sunset safari a little bit later, and of course for the Waterhole show. And then you've also asked what personality type would I say is best suited to become a safari guide. So just like with anything in a career that involves spending most time with people, obviously we have the perk, right, of being in a environment where it's open and there's wildlife, the best kind of place. Uh, you're still dealing with people. You're having to manage people's expectations. You're working with big teams and lots of different personalities. So the most important thing is to firstly be personable, be able to get on with lots of different people, find common ground, even though you might not have anything initially in common with people. And the other thing is a safari guide. We start off young, not always the case, but I started guiding when I was very, very young, and I would guide a lot of people that were sometimes three times older than myself. So again, you need to have a slightly more mature approach to, I suppose, how you guide and how you interact with people. Can't be like a young, loud, well, I suppose actually I was all these things and somehow managed to get away with it. But yeah, so you need to be able to, adapt to your guests. You also need to be patient. That is an important skill, not only for dealing with, well, guests being unhappy because they're not necessarily seeing wildlife, just as one example, or for the fact because wildlife is hiding away and now you're getting frustrated because it feels like you're not able to do your job, all these types of things. So patience is important. Problem solving and quick thinking are another two traits that I would say are quite important. But there's a whole bunch, Justin. So thank you very much for that. But I think the best of the best guides, and I don't think everybody should be a safari guide, just like I shouldn't be a doctor or a lawyer or anything along those lines. If you want to be at the top of your game as a safari guide, above anything else, you just need to be able to win people over. And in the end, people are here to have fun. They want to come on safari, see some wildlife, photograph them, and of course, learn a whole bunch. Ooh, now this is going to be a difficult question. And it's from Cherry. You said, if I wasn't guiding, what would I be doing? I have no idea if being really sad because I'm not guiding. uh, I also always wanted to be a wildlife vet, just like Jamie Patterson. If you've been watching the live safari drives, at one point I wanted to be a equine dentist, so a dentist for horses. It's a very specialized niche career. And then when I was much younger, a firefighter and a security guard were high up on my cards. So, oh, and a paleontologist. Maybe I would have become a paleontologist, actually. That's that would have been something I think I would have enjoyed doing. Oh, goodness gracious. I just want to do anything that allows me to be outside. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to say goodbye to Namibia just for a bit and head over to the Djuma waterhole camera. Yay! So just before the show started, this juvenile African fish eagle was feasting upon something on the ground. Now, it doesn't look like much of a fish eagle, right? It's got all sorts of colors on it, but the fact is that birds of prey, and especially the bigger ones, or not actually, no, all birds of prey, they take a long time to develop. And we see this with other bird species too. But when they've hatched and they start developing their feathers, they don't necessarily have the adult coloration straight away. For birds that live for longer years and take many years to mature, such as a fish eagle, a bateleur, and a bunch of other bird species, this is what we can see. So this is an immature bird. I don't think it's too far away from becoming an adult, but it takes them a number of years. Let's say, what's it for? I'm trying to remember now what it is for a fish eagle. Is it about 5 years, 4 to 5 years before it reaches adulthood? I know with bateleurs, it's up to about 6 or 7 years, which is crazy. I can't remember now for an African fish eagle, but it's somewhere around there. It's a couple of years for sure. And what a great place to hang around. Off to the right, you see the little southern grey-headed sparrow too. It's just sitting there. And at one point, there was also a blue waxbill. Now we see these smaller birds gathering around the larger birds of prey. Sometimes they try to mob them to intimidate them and also to encourage them to move on. But they seem to be letting this fish eagle do its thing. Uh, it's actually staring down at the water at the moment. See, look at that. How it's arching its neck. And it's hoping to catch a fish. And there are some big fish lurking in the murky waters of Gowrie Dam. We'll just watch it for a little bit and also enjoy the sounds of the red-billed buffalo weavers, that sound that you can hear. There it is. There's also some insects of some sort just for creating noises. Chad, you've wondered, do birds bend their necks like that as a hunting adaptation? Not necessarily. So what this fish eagle is doing is just purely looking below itself, below its feet, to see if there is anything moving around below it, and then it will fly down and try and catch it. But yes, there are some birds that bend their necks as a hunting adaptation. We don't typically see it with birds of prey necessary. But if you've been watching, Chad, we started off at Okukuya, Namibia, and then we saw the black-headed heron. There's a perfect example of how birds move their necks around for a hunting adaptation. So for them, they pull their necks back in, almost forms like an S shape, and when they feel that they're in striking distance of their prey, they will shoot their necks forward and spear. I'm also just watching the sparrows on the right. They're using a cavity in this dead tree, do you see? And I think they were bringing nesting material into that little cavity. That's exciting. Both of them, both be a male and a female, hard at work. Oh, wow. I must remember this. And I don't know if for those of you that watch the Djuma waterhole camera, all the time, not necessarily when we're hosting live at the waterhole, I wonder, let me know, have you noticed that before, that there was a little southern grey-headed sparrow nest? Or was this something else that we can start to follow? So the beauty of these live wildlife shows is that we're in the same areas consistently, and we're able to follow the lives of certain animals. I can't stop looking at that feather that's stuck on the top of the head of this fish eagle, and I bet those sparrows wouldn't mind taking that back to the nest to line the inside of it. And then I just had a quick look at the YouTube chat, and I see Layla, you've said, how long does it take to become a safari guide? That's a great question, Layla. So there are a number of different so, nature guide courses that you can do, I suppose, or field guide courses. But typically, if you do the Field Guides Association of Southern Africa, the FAGASA course, and you do everything on site at a training provider, it will take about 55 days. That includes all your theory, so filling in the workbooks, the theory exam, learning how to drive the vehicles, identifying trees, tracks, learning about mammal behavior, you name it. And then, of course, finally completing the practical exam where you conduct a game drive experience. So it's not that long. And of course, that's just the beginning. And from there, it's your job as a safari guide to constantly keep improving. And there are many more qualifications you can do after that. We kind of have levels. So you start with an apprentice field guide, and then you can become a field guide, and then a professional field guide. And there are a bunch of walking qualifications too. And advanced rifle handling is important if you're going to want to do some birding. But then you can also just study through CAPCETA and do the I suppose the government qualifications that legally make you a guide. You don't necessarily have to do the FAGASA qualification. However, it's now become the industry standard, and most lodges require you, or would prefer it if you had the FAGASA training syllabus accompanied with the CAPCETA. But if you do the FAGASA training at a registered training provider, that CAPCETA side of things is all included. So you don't have to worry about going to do that in a separate time. Now, here's a question, and I'm wondering, Hans, if you're maybe referring to the noise that we can hear in the background, that sort of high-pitched rasping sound, clicking, which is definitely from an insect. And you've said, are there multiple cicada species, and do they have any different calls? So if you don't know what a cicada is, you've probably heard one. They make this really, really high-pitched, almost sounds like a cricket. If you can, I suppose everybody knows what a cricket sounds like, but it's constant and it happens during the day when it's exceptionally warm, and it's a deafening sound. And most noticeable when they're in a chorus, and there's quite a few of them. So yes, there are many different species. My favorite, well, there's a couple of different species. The one that I find in the low veld, which is this area, quite often is the axehead cicada. So they've got similar calls, but they all sound a little bit different. But for the most part, you'll hear one and you'll go, okay, yeah, that's definitely a cicada. I can't mimic the noise, so then you're going to have to hop onto the interwebs and Google and search for, we even just search for a video clip of that insect producing its sound. Go on. Oh, well, here we go. So now that this fish eagle's defecated, there's a potential that it might take off. It's not always the case, but it's something that we associate. Birds that have perched that will defecate are either going to move around or take to the air. However, I don't want this fish eagle to take to the air. I would like it to drop down to the water's edge. It looks like it wants to go. There we go. Go on. Whee, off it goes. And you can see this tree is actually dead, so that's why it's moving around. It's impressive that it is still standing. Now we're going to play the game of where did the fish eagle go? So we've got great people who we call zoomies, and they are controlling the cameras. Now we do the scan. And this is a massive waterhole. So we're going to do a lot of scanning to try and find it. It might have flown off to the right-hand side. Well, that's the direction that it flew. There's a couple more dead trees. Huh. Where did you go?
Are you in search of a unique, unforgettable adventure in the wild? Imagine living with the animals you see on TV while getting an inside look at how a live safari TV show operates. We're thrilled to offer this experience through our 7, 14 and 28-day EcoCam experiences. To book your spot, visit wildearth.tv/EcoCam. Come and join us for the bush experience of a lifetime.
So keep an eye out as we scan around here. It's always good to check the tops of these big marula trees. There could be a leopard sitting in one. I'm not sure where Tlalamba, the female leopard, if you were watching the sunset and the sunrise safari, you would have seen that Jamie spent pretty much all the drives, well, both of those drives with this female leopard. And I think she came somewhere around here, so we'll keep an eye out for her. But there's a bird in a small artificial pan. It's lined with concrete. It doesn't get filled up very often. It's mainly just topped up by the rain, and we've had some rain. Now, this bird is called a hammerkorp. You can see very clearly that why it's called a hammerkorp. Look at that sort of hammer shape at the back of its head. They're just feathers, though. And of course, what would a waterhole be without a dragonfly? So I love these birds. They're great. They're so much fun to watch. Avid hunters. That was the Egyptian geese. It sounded like they landed in the water. And I do wish that this hammerkorp would just move to a spot where the grass isn't so long so we could see it a bit better. Oh, here's an interesting question. We're just going back to the fish eagle from Lenny. You said, do I think that the fish eagles have maybe gotten the Egyptian geese goslings? Yes, absolutely. I know the name. Oh, look, sorry, there's also a striated heron, a much smaller heron species. So, Lenny, we can quickly answer that. Um, the name fish eagle is quite misleading because it implies that it's just fish that those eagles feed on, but that's not the case. And Egyptian geese, goslings, and other uh, birds of any kind will also swallow that heron. That's so funny. I wonder if it's chasing the dragonflies. Will pretty much eat anything. I've even seen the fish eagles scavenging along the Bushman's River to create a game reserve. So this little bird, and this kind of ties in to the question from. Sorry, I just have to open up everything now because technology doesn't like me very much. Who was it from? Oh, here we go. Chad, you were wondering about birds and their positions of their head. So here you can see how they'll pull it back and then shoot it forward. This bird normally hunts from a perch at the base of the water. They're also known for dropping things in front of them and uses bait to lure the fish from beneath the water to come up. But of course, their diet is varied. There's probably a lot of frogs moving through this grass, and if there are any insects about, they'll eat them too. I wouldn't put it past this heron if there was a snake or a small reptile of some kind to eat it too. That was a great glitch. I loved it. Field Guide Taz, you said hello from Pilansburg. Thank you very much for keeping me company or keeping you company while you're on office duty. Well, Field Guide Taz, I feel for you that you're stuck in the office. That's literally a safari guide, a field guide, or anyone in conservation's worst nightmare. But sometimes we, of course, have to keep up with admin or um, sort of take on the roles of other people too. Guides are like jack of all trades. We can do so many different things. Need your tire changed? No problem. Have to change a light bulb in your room at 2 o'clock in the morning? That's also fine. Need to check if the elements on the geyser are still working? Not perfect. Snapped a brake line? Nah, not a problem. It will take a couple of hours, but we'll get it sorted. And then, of course, we're exceptionally good at talking nonsense about wildlife and entertaining the socks off of guests. Oh, Bev 31314. You've said to me, or you've asked, I think that I'd be able to live in a city for a very long time. No, not even the slightest. I haven't lived in a big city for the better part of 11 years. I don't know what it's like anymore. Sometimes I go to a big city for a short period of time, but I honestly, I feel overwhelmed in situations like that. There's just so many lights. It's bright, it's loud, but not loud with the sounds that I'm used to. I don't like it when dogs bark or babies are crying constantly, especially when it's from your neighbors. I prefer, of course, arguing with the vervet monkeys and the Egyptian geese. And this is a pair that are just doing a sort of bonding display. So they'll vocalize and almost dance around. And that's, of course, good to just keep the bond strong between the pair. So I don't know where the goslings are. These birds are quite territorial, so they do stick around in one area for the most part, but they can move if they are displaced by other Egyptian geese. And we see that quite often. Or, of course, if they just lose all their chicks, they might move to another area and try again. So, Bev, the town that I live in, which is called Hoedspruit, is the safari capital of South Africa, and it's such a small town. We don't even have traffic lights. We have stop streets, and the new addition is speed bumps, which if you don't approach slowly, you'll take out your sump of your vehicle, which is not great, or you might lose a front bumper if you're driving a vehicle that's quite low. And that's it, really. Most of the areas don't even have like street lights, which is great. The fact that pretty much everybody that lives in the town can hear lions roaring from multiple or from multiple directions because it is surrounded by game reserves. Ah, this is a goodie. Justin, you said how is it that there is fynbos on the top of Maritzkorp? It's interesting, right? It's actually not fynbos as we know fynbos in Cape Town. So if you don't know what fynbos is, uh, it's a type of plant species. Well, it's not just one plant species. It's a bunch of different plants that are categorized and uh, and form a biome called the fynbos biome. These plants are herbaceous. They don't necessarily always have big leaves. They're quite like a woody plant species, and they normally have these fragrant smells. And it's typically quite sparse vegetation, not very many big trees, but beautiful though, really beautiful. And within the Cape Floral Kingdom, you get fynbos, and then you get another category called rhinosterfelt. And it's actually rhinosterfelt plant species that are found up on Table Mountain, not Table Mountain, of course you find them there, but up on the northern Drakensberg. Uh, I think obviously just at that altitude, it happens to grow with the right amount of rainfall. Um, and I don't know. I don't exactly know how it's got there. I just imagine that the conditions are right for those plant species to grow. And I mean, it's originally thought that obviously that any of those plants, only of those types of plants, were found in the Western Cape of South Africa. But there are pockets here and there that are popping up. It's not anything that's artificial, it's just naturally occurring. It's so strange when you go up there, though. It's like a different world. And when you're up at the top of Maritz's Lookout Point, you look down to all the game reserves and to the Kruger National Park, and you just see these big trees, lush green, especially at this time of the year. And you have sort of these dwarf shrubs that form part of the rhinosterfelt. There's the clouds. So this is what we're hoping is going to move away soon. We've had days of rain, but there's no more rain that's been forecasted. But of course, that can change. The dew point, of course, in these clouds can most certainly change, and we can get these little localized showers. But I've seen a patch of blue every now and then, and it's quite bright outside. Okay, well, hopefully we'll find something else at Djuma. Let's head over to another one of the locations, a Mintyquith Game Reserve. Oh, an elephant. This is a young elephant bull that has already had a splash around in the water and is now just taking his time and quenching his thirst. I'm having such a chuckle. So I get fed, just so you know, let me quickly explain how this show works because it's quite spectacular that we're able to put this together, right? I'm sitting in the Sabi Sands Game Reserve at Djuma, one of the locations, the main location that we conduct the live safaris from. And we have access to these waterhole cameras in these different wilderness areas. Then there is a WildEarth studio, is located in Johannesburg, and it's filled with pretty much the same equipment that you would find in any live broadcasting studio. So for, maybe like a news studio, something along those lines, very similar. So of course you have directors, producers, and editors, and everyone else in between. And I can't forget the technical wizards that make sure they put this all together. But I laughed so hard because I was just scrolling the YouTube chats, just because I find little questions and comments every now and then. Of course, and the bulk of the questions come through from the WildEarth page where you can ask questions, but I don't have access to that. And Jordan, who is one of the directors, has just mentioned on the chat that Tadiwa is actually the best director. So I wonder what Jordan did wrong that she's had to say that. No, I'm just teasing, of course. The directors are all fantastic. And it's great because everybody has their own personalities and little quirks, just like us as naturalists, well, just people in general. And these two elephant bulls kind of greeting one another, sort of, saying, hey, how's it going? And it's all innocent now, but it's probably going to turn into a little bit of a push and shove because bulls of the sage can't help themselves. And well, if they need to compensate for the fact that they have no mating rights when they're this size. And that's probably quite hard for them. There's a lot of pent up frustration. So, isn't it just the best way to have a bit of a box, a bit of a tussle? Obviously, animals like to do that.
This immersive program will give you an in-depth understanding of the African bush in as little as 7 days. You'll be guided by expert trainers who will lead you through the various ecosystems of Africa and teach you essential bush skills. Join Eco Training's 7 or 14-day EcoQuest course and you will receive 500 Rand off whether you sign up locally or internationally using this promo code. Further your journey as a true bush enthusiast today.
Lucy, thank you. This is your second question. Thank you so much for sending them in. I don't know if I recognize your name, so let me know. Have you been watching before? Have you just found live at the Waterhole? But you've asked, does dirty water impact on animals' lives? So, for the most part, no, it doesn't. They're so used to drinking water that contains a lot of sediment. I mean, they stir it up themselves, and animals urinate and defecate in the water. So, for you and I, we look at it and we go, absolutely not. We're not drinking that. And if we were to drink it, we'd get really sick because our stomachs are not used to all the bacteria that are in the water. But our digestive system is very different and probably a lot more sensitive than most animals out in the bush. I mean, even just look at elephants for an example. But Lucy, I don't know if you know this, elephants actually prefer to drink fresh water, clean water when it's available. So that's why you always see the elephants at this little inlet drinking water, because that's where the pipe is that pumps water into the Jamala waterhole. So animals will constantly just keep drinking water, but there are some cases where water becomes too putrid and it can make animals sick. And it's something, again, that I have brought up a couple of times, but I'm going to repeat myself. Cyanobacteria, which is often called blue-green algae, but it's not an algae. This is toxic to wildlife. I suppose it depends on the size of the animal that's going to determine the quantity where they can be affected, and that kills wildlife. And there's of course a couple of other things too. And Jody, you've asked, have I ever witnessed a fatal spar, so fight between animals? I have, and only once in the 11 years that I've been in this industry. And I've also been going on safari for the better part of my life, like since I was in nappies or diapers. Obviously, I don't remember what happened then, but I'll never forget there was a waterbuck fight that I watched while I was working at Sabi at Earth Lodge, at the dam just outside the camp, just before you arrive at the entrance of Earth Lodge. And the waterbuck bulls were fighting on land, and anyways, they ended up pushing and shoving one another into the water. And one waterbuck bull uh, made such a blow that the second individual actually fell into the water. He ended up dying, but he was just being constantly rammed all the time. So that is the only time I've ever seen a fight to the death, if you will. Um, but another animal that people quite often see, you see a lot of photos of it, where animals will spar and almost like fight to the death, is kudu. And it's not necessarily that they will horn one another or stab each other, but because they've got twisted horns, they're part of the Tragelaphus tribe, which describes antelope of the spiraled horn family, and they'll get interlocked with one another. And if they aren't able to unlock their horns, it's quite possible that one or both of them can die. They're also vulnerable to predators. But Jody, have you ever seen anything like that? We see animals sparring all the time. Elephants spar all year round, especially these younger bulls. And then when it comes to breeding season and male animals are competing for breeding rights, then yes, absolutely. Then we tend to see more fights. Okay. We've got a joke here from Justin. I'm excited for this. You said, "What do you call an elephant that doesn't matter? An irrelevant?" Is that the answer? I'm just trying to think. I think I've heard this before, maybe worded slightly differently, but I think it's an irrelevant, which is hysterical. If you've got any great safari jokes, please let me know. But Justin, if I'm not correct, I'm eagerly waiting for the answer. Safari puns are also a firm favorite amongst all the naturalists. My favorite one, and I tell this all the time, and most people just roll their eyes at me, but I don't care. I think it's great. It's a dung beetle walks into a bar and says, "Is this stool taken?" Ba-dum. If you don't get it, stool is another word for dung, feces, and they're dung beetles. They go and search and collect the dung, and also stool is a chair. So I thought that was one of the funniest ones I've heard. But there are some goodies out there, and then some others that I roll my eyes at. Oh no, I'm being booed by the directors. Ah, I don't know. I think it's a combination of eye rolling and then a bit of laughter because it's like a dad joke. Maybe we should do that feel good Sunday where we just tell stories about, or actually not tell stories, just talk about and tell wildlife jokes. I'd love that. I saw a very funny video on the interwebs because that it can be a great place, also a very dark place. But I can't remember. I told you guys yesterday, but it was hysterical. It's just this elephant, and I don't know where the video was taken, but it's defecating, and elephants defecate all the time because they eat so much, and they don't digest it very well either. So in with the new and out with the old. And as it was defecating, there's a bird called a fork-tailed drongo, and quite a few different species of birds do this, but they fly around mammals while they're moving around and feeding because they'll disturb insects in the grass and then they can swoop down and catch them. And this drongo swooped down at the wrong time and came quite close to the rear end of an elephant, and one of the big balls of dung actually landed on top of it, and that drongo was never seen again. Actually, as a joke, I don't know if it was ever seen again because that's where the video ends. But it is so funny, and I thought, my goodness, why couldn't that have been me? Because I always see, and not always, but for the most part, I have the funniest, strange sightings of the least expected scenario in the bush, and I love it. I'm like, you know what? I don't mind if I don't see hunts all the time, but give me the funny, comical things, the often overlooked. Uh, so yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. Oh, okay. Here's a joke from the director. So I'm going to read it out, and they're going to give me the answer. What did the buffalo say to his son when he left for college? Okay, I know this one, but the answer is bison or bison. Get it? Bison is another name for a buffalo, especially in the Americas. We don't get bison here in Africa though, but that's a goodie too. Bison. I'm trying to think of all the other jokes. Actually, do you know who has some funny jokes and puns? Is Jamie. She is spot on. She's got an unbelievable sense of humor. I always find myself cracking up. Normally, it's one of those really unattractive laughs. Oh, here we go. We've got another one from Catherine. Where does the lizard go after dropping off its tail? The retail shop. Ha ha ha. That's a goodie. That's a really good one. I haven't heard that before, so thank you, Catherine. That's a new one. Cool. Let's let's watch these elephants. You can see the behavior here is interesting. Moving away. Look how they're swinging their trunks around. Kind of got a bit of swagger in their step, and not. This is not a serious altercation. Again, this is just what young bulls do. Constant posturing. You can see how he's lifting his head up. That is all aimed at this other individual who is intent is pushing and shoving. He's not even allowing him to go and drink. That's a bit rude.
Eco Training's professional field guide course can make your dreams a reality. This comprehensive program comprises 5 months of theoretical and practical training in the African bush with highly qualified instructors in multiple locations. Enroll today and receive 5,000 Rand off using the promo code. If you've just finished school or tertiary education and you want to head into the wild, Eco Training's professional field guide course is for you.
Cherry, you've said that you think that these bulls look a bit more restless than usual. They are constantly sizing one another up. It looks to me, again, it's a bit difficult with the angle of the camera. Is the one on the right slightly larger? Bulls that are in their, you know, early 20s to mid 30s, they can be quite boisterous. And they're not anywhere near being fully grown yet. They've still got a long way to go. There'll be bigger and bigger elephant bulls around, and they'll keep these youngsters in check. And one of the problems that we see, and actually, field guide Taz, who's watching earlier, will probably know about this story quite well with what happened to the elephants in Pilanesberg National Park. This was, is it Pilanesberg National Park or Game? I don't know. Anyways, it happened a very long time ago, but there were no big bulls in this ecosystem, and they only had introduced younger bulls. And the bulls were so restless and frustrated because the females weren't particularly interested in mating with them that they started mounting rhinos and other animals. And they had to bring in some big bulls from the Kruger National Park to come in and sort it out. And having big bulls is important because it suppresses them from going into a state called must. So this is where the testosterone levels are high, and it's like a drive to go out and search for females that are in estrus to try and mate for them. And they normally move big distances to do this. So perhaps these boys are just feeling a bit on the boisterous side, and then maybe they have a bone to pick with one another. But there's one individual, that one that was on the left hand side. He seems to be intent and constantly looking for a fight. Like the other one's trying to walk away and doesn't want to engage. So I'm sure at some point, though, if that continues, that there will be a big clash of tusks, and and hopefully to try and humble that or the individual that was on the left hand side, just to put him back in line again. So it sounds like that we opened a can of worms because there are lots of jokes coming in, which I'm excited to hear. So while I wait for some more of those to come through, there's another question from Justin, and you've asked, "What am I looking forward to most in 2024?" Sure. I'm sure everybody says the same thing, right? Aren't we all sick and tired of 2023? And I'm just like, can we fast forward the days so that we can try and start again in the new year? Things that I've got to look forward to is I'm going to be traveling a lot more. I've got quite a few private safaris, other great things planned. I'm also excited to just to relax a little bit more. This year's been quite strenuous on the work front, so I've made a couple of decisions that allow me, when I'm not on safari, to not have to worry too much about admin work, which I'm excited about. So I want to spend more time with friends and family, and of course my dog. Oh, here we go. So Bull, you've said, what sound does a porcupine make when they kiss? The answer is ouchie. How do porcupines kiss? Very carefully. And then Serena, you said, where do polar bears vote? And the answer to that is the North Pole. Very, very funny. Thank you, everybody. I'm hoping those of you that are watching just silently, that these jokes just put a smile on your dial. Here's an interesting an interesting comment by Catherine. You said that they killed one of the oldest desert elephants, who was a so-called problem elephant, and then after that, the real problems started. This is something that we actually see a lot of. We see this with obviously with elephants, like I described. Um, Maybe there was some underlying condition with this elephant that was making him act out of the ordinary, or perhaps he was put in some situations where he maybe didn't have pleasant experiences with people. And after all, elephants are highly intelligent. But where I've noticed it is, and again, there's going to be so many people that disagree with me, and I'm not going to touch too much on this. But when you say, for example, you shoot jackals, because jackals are considered vermin, especially to farmers and hunters and everything like that. And you have to understand from, say, for an example, a farmer's perspective, that a predator could devastate his income. Now, it's the same thing of like when locusts come through and devastate crops. So we understand that animals need space, they need things to feed on, and there is a lot less of it because of habitat loss. But then also it affects somebody's livelihood and families and employ people that are being employed by these farms or whatever the case is. And again, I'm not condoning this, but when you shoot something like jackals or a dominant animal or a dominant pair of animals, all you do is open up a space for younger, inexperienced individuals to kind of come on through. And then they'll occupy the space. And quite often you'll end up with more rather than having a dominant pair that have a territory and, and kind of keep, say, for example, other jackals out of their space. So it's a tricky thing to do. Obviously, there's many different arguments for this, and of course it's important that you do research so that you can form your own opinion, chat to people. And it's difficult because I feel like this we find ourselves conservationists find themselves in this position. Sometimes there's just no right or wrong answer, and you have to choose the lesser of the two evils. So that's all I'm going to really say about that, but it's interesting to think about. But anyways, but there seems to be a lot of animosity between the elephants today. I'm just trying to see. Look there. See, look at that bull on the right. You see how he charged on over? He's got his head raised. He's got his ears.
Hickory dickory dock, the kids ran to the spot. The clock struck 4, the kids sat down, hickory dickory dock. Our kids safaris bring interactive entertainment and learning to the future protectors of our world for 1 hour every weekday during our safari drives. Watch it live on your nearest device. Don't miss out on the fun. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
So it's kind of back and forward with these elephant bulls. Again, those two at the back don't want to leave one another alone. Now, did you see how it didn't really look like much? Watch those trunks, though. The trunk and the tail can tell you so much about an elephant. And these signs are very often overlooked. And they're normally the initial signs to kind of show agitation or, whether they are scared or whatever the case may be. You can look at that, but it does take quite a bit of practice watching it and then understanding what certain twists of the trunk mean. I always talk about Elephant Voices. It's a great website. If you want to learn more about the intricacies of elephants, from their olfactory systems to the different sounds that they produce, what certain body language means. Quite often they have pictures or video clips to accompany all of this. So it's a great website to learn from. Sometimes it's difficult when you read about a behavior, but you're not able to see it, and it might take a long time for you to actually witness it in real life. So that's a nice option. Right, everybody. It's 1 p.m. and you all know what that means. It means that the AfriCam cameras have become available to all of us. So let's go see which camera we're going to head to first. Oh my goodness, what a change of scenery. So we are now on the east coast of South Africa at Tembe Elephant Park.